Hey, deserving listeners, this is chapter 15 in our deep dive on the psychology of Elon Musk. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor.
And my name is Humberto Castañeda, and I build and sell garage closers.
Okay, so in this chapter, the main thing I want to talk about is what I'm calling the Twitter spiral. In the last chapter, we talked about how psychodynamic theory can potentially explain at least what it looks like from afar when we observe Elon Musk's behavior in terms of the more recent behavior online on Twitter. It helps to provide a model of understanding that, plus in-group, out-group dynamics that we were talking about. But I want to be more specific just to Twitter and some of the things that are notable in terms of what has happened since he purchased it. So I also need to mention that we're recording this on September 9th, even though this chapter will air in mid-October. A lot might happen between now and then. Maybe Twitter doesn't exist in mid-October. I don't know. But I feel like I need to mention that because people might say, how come you're not talking about this one thing? Because it seems like every day there's another thing. But anyway, so as a reminder, for Elon Musk's childhood, he was in constant trauma, high level. As a therapist, I have heard a lot of stories of childhood trauma. Elon Musk is one of the worst I've heard. His parents fighting, his dad beating his mom repeatedly, Elon Musk himself trying to defend his mother against his father at the age of 5 years old, hitting his father, stop hitting mom, and dad beating him, dad berating him, which arguably is even more damaging, lecturing Elon about how stupid, how much of an idiot he is, the constant bullying he's going through in his school, no friends, being attacked regularly. There was one time when he was put in the hospital, but he was attacked and abused and hit and rejected for years. It's one of the worst stories I've ever heard regarding a childhood. So keep that in mind as we move forward. In 2009, Twitter gains popularity and he starts to tweet a lot. We talked a lot about in the last chapter as to why he would do that. Some would say it's narcissism or something, or he's just interested in boosting his image. But I contend, my speculation is that he was attracted to Twitter because it helped him to recreate his childhood. The venue provided this opportunity to get approval and hatred, to get bullying from other people, to have a daily, minute by minute, hour by hour interaction matrix, if you will. The way that, for example, you and I, Berto, throughout the day, we might interact with each other, or other people in our life will text or call or talk to if we're in the same room. For Elon Musk, he didn't have that growing up. And right. I don't think he really has that in his life as an adult, maybe a little bit, but not to the extent that I think he needs. And when you are denied that growing up, you need it even more as an adult. You know what I mean? So I think that's why he started tweeting. And of course, you could say he might have consciously have known that it'll help boost his products if he lies about things, if he, as a lot of the tech entrepreneurs will do, not that it excuses it. Elizabeth Holmes isn't the only one that has just completely lied about their products' capabilities and what the next 5 years holds for their products and their stock price. You know what I mean? Now, we talked about in the last chapter how from 2009 to 2018, everything was relatively latent and okay. If anything happened, it was under the radar. His businesses are taking off, and you could argue that because and literally taking off with SpaceX, and that he was, getting that affirmation and that distraction every day, his self-esteem, and everyone loved him on the left, on the right, in the middle. Everyone was just like, oh my God, he's the best. And every day he's reaching new heights, and everything's going fine. In his personal life, he was originally in the aughts with his first wife. Through the next number of years, he's on and off with Tallulah Riley. Then he has an official breakup with Tallulah, the second divorce. That brings us to 2017. So in 2017, he had a relationship with Amber Heard. Had you heard about this relationship?
I had not heard about it at the time.
Yeah. So I remember hearing about this during the hearing, lots of parallels here, with Amber Heard and Johnny Depp.
Right.
There was like a reference to it. And the way that it was talked about, it was like a very brief dating relationship, maybe a month or two, not really significant.
Oh, okay.
Well, today, Berto, I come across this interview with Elon Musk. In an interview with Rolling Stone that happened just after breaking up with Amber Heard, so this might be 2017, maybe early 2018, Elon Musk says that, yeah, publicly, we released a statement saying that our breakup was mutual. Mm-hmm. But he says it was not mutual.
Oh.
She dumped me.
Oh, okay.
And then he says the following quote, I was really in love and it hurt bad. I've been in severe emotional pain for the last few weeks. Severe.
Wow. Can I make a note? I've been consistently surprised with how much he discloses in open kimono style in these interviews. A lot of these interviews.
Yeah.
Like, my father deeply abused me in evil ways.
Side note to that.
Yeah.
I think we, one, are not highlighted these stories because it doesn't fit the narrative in the news or our algorithm or something.
Right.
But also, I don't think people ask him these kinds of questions because people are mostly interested in the more salacious stories and the business stuff. You know,
cool stuff.
A lot of some rockets and stuff, or that one tweet. He said, I don't think he gets a lot of questions of just like, how do you feel about X, Y, and Z? Because when he is asked of the stuff I've seen, he answers.
Right.
But there's so little of this out there that I think it's evidence that people aren't asking because they don't care. Another example of him being, neglected emotionally in that way. But anyway, yeah. So he says he was really in love and it hurt really bad and he had severe emotional pain. Now, if you can hate him if you want to, but this sounds like legit. Why would he say this? It doesn't serve him at all, really. And he's in the middle of this grief and the middle of this pain. And here's my speculation. Up until this point, he had relationships. He had a relationship with his first wife, Justine. He had a relationship on and off again with Tallulah Riley. But from my very limited understanding of Amber Heard's personality from the psychological evaluations and the allegations that were put forth in the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial. And of course, both sides were making a case, and you can make a case that one or both sides were lying or spinning things. But the conceptualization that I was wondering about with Amber Heard was traumas regarding attention and acceptance and love. And her way of coping with it might have been, and I don't know, is to be highly preoccupied and highly noticing of a relationship closeness. And when you meet someone like that, when you date someone like that, it can feel intoxicating because they're so interested in you. They can come across as very needy, but another way of putting it is they're just really in love with you. They make you feel needed. They make you feel loved. They make you feel paid attention to. And as long as everything's going fine, then it's positive. But that need also comes from an insecurity and a desperation and a trauma that can, in relation to what we talked about last time, it can distort the perception of you're abandoning me or you are harming me in a way when this person didn't do that, and then they turn on that person and you're like, but I don't know. All that conceptualization could be based on lies. I'm sure some of it is based on lies, but there was enough evidence from Amber Heard herself that seemed to point in that direction. I don't know. But I could see a scenario where Elon Musk, for the very first time, had a very intense closeness partnership with Amber Heard, one that he had never experienced before.
Oh, wow.
I can't know that, but I could see it being true. I could see his first wife, Justine, and his second wife, and third wife, by the way, Tallulah Riley, because he married her twice, that the way in interviews they come across, I wouldn't be surprised if they are similarly, loving people, but kind of distant and not as over-involved. Amber Heard comes across like someone who, when she becomes involved, she becomes very, very involved. And so, who knows? But I could see Elon Musk, even if it was a short relationship, that he felt tremendously just opened wide up of like finally, for the first time, I have security and love and attention and all-encompassing, like, we know each other. We're staring into each other's eyes. If you've ever been through a relationship like this, you know what that feels like. It's intoxicating, but sometimes it carries a price, right? So,
and then if it's ripped away,
right?
Yeeks.
Right. So to have that ripped away and to have, I would contend there's evidence, and we could understand why, that for Elon Musk, in terms of attachment and security, he's more on the avoidant side, right? More on the distant side, more the independent, pathologically independent side. Well, underneath all that pathological independence and avoidance is a tremendous need for closeness. And when someone like that comes along, they'll break through that defense because they're just so invasive / loving and enmeshed that it'll dissolve that pushing away of other people. And then you open up and you're just like, for the first time since I was born, I'm just getting this all-encompassing love. It's absolutely intoxicating, and it feels very good.
Right.
And it's vulnerable. So it's scary. And when it's ripped away, it's not like being hurt in past relationships. It's being hurt in a whole other way, in a very deep, childish kind of way. Anyway.
And that was 2017?
So it's 2017.
Oh.
Heading into 2018.
Yeah.
So he also said to the Rolling Stone interview, I will never be happy without having someone. Going to sleep alone kills me.
Ooh.
So he's saying, I need a relationship. Going to sleep alone kills me. It's not like I don't know what it feels like being in an empty house and the footsteps echoing through the hallway, no one there, and no one on the pillow next to you. Fuck. How do you make yourself happy in a situation like that?
Wow.
That's what he says. So, by the way, people say that Elon Musk clearly has narcissistic personality disorder. This doesn't sound like narcissistic personality disorder. I've treated people with untreated narcissistic personality disorder. They don't typically talk like this. Can you imagine Donald Trump saying something like this?
No.
So this is at least a tick in the column of that's not a viable conceptualization of the situation. Definitely attachment insecurity, but not in that direction.
I think what happens is that there are moments where he lashes out at other people or says things about other people that seem, quote, narcissistic, egotistic, etc. I mean, that's why I put it in quotes.
Yeah.
Right? Because to us lay people out there, it's like, what a narcissist. He thinks he's better than, he thinks he knows more than any human alive about manufacturing. He thinks he knows more than all those developers. Like, that's pretty egotistic,
Yeah.
And so then that turns into like, okay, he must be a malignant narcissist.
Right. Because people have a very limited understanding of narcissism and of personality, which I get because it's complicated.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's take a break. We get back. Let's enter 2018 with understanding where he left off there. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right, we're back from the break. So 2018, I'll remind you that this is the year that he allegedly settled with the alleged sexual harassment.
And this wasn't public yet, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So this is all going behind the scenes.
Yeah.
The event apparently happened in 2016. He is sued and settles in 2018.
Right.
So in 2017, he's going through all that litigation, I'm guessing. And this was an employee who accused him of sexually assaulting her. And also remember, the Me Too movement is in full swing in 2017. So he must have been aware that if this gets out there, it could absolutely ruin him.
Right.
And suffer tremendous disapproval, which my conceptualization is just a speculation that for him, he is desperate for approval, particularly constant dopamine drip style like Twitter can provide. And we assume that, okay, if he did sexually harass and assault this woman, he must be a psychopath, right? That's the assumption that people have. But the truth is the vast majority of sexual harassment incidents and assaults are perpetrated by people that are not psychopaths. So, Berto, why would a non-psychopath do what he did?
And we're talking about the airplane one specifically.
Yeah.
So essentially, I'm thinking about it more from the perspective of he is hurt about approval, and he is also someone that just in that other interview you were talking about feels lonely, right? But he's got a lot of money and power. And so I think, the things get mixed up in his head and he goes, oh, I like this gal. I like this gal here. How do I come on to her? Okay, she's my employee, but I'm not going to think about that. How do I come on to her? I could talk about books. No, I could just maybe talk her into becoming a massage therapist, and then she'll touch me, and then I can also offer her things, material things.
Like a horse.
Yeah, like a horse. And obviously all those conversations are happening in a micro instant in
right.
his
It's not
head.
like he sets out to do where it ends up,
Yeah.
and this is just speculative, of course, as you're laying it out. But That's another way of looking at it, right? And also, if you're working all the time and you're not going on Tinder or you're not meeting potential partners in the wild because you're working all the time, and you have a misunderstanding and a model around you of other execs that do this kind of stuff, then it kind of normalizes this.
And she's being extra nice to you.
Right.
And in your head, you're like,
because she works for you.
Right. But in your head, you were like, I mean, she might be into me.
Right. Every woman can attest to this, that they think they're just being nice, and then they're accused of leading someone on. Yeah. So that's one pathway. There are others, like I said, modeling or normalization. Also, desperation for affection.
Yeah.
And having no way to get it. You start justifying those little slippery slope actions down the road, and before you're at the end, you're thinking, well, I'm pretty sure it's okay if I just reach out and grab that,
Right.
When you look back on it, you're like, oh, man, I must have been desperate and lonely and suffering.
And imagine the early phases of these interactions when there's these huge power imbalances. The person on the receiving end, at least a lot of people, I know I would be, there's a thought crossing your mind like, oh, the CEO is paying attention to me. This could be my big ticket. Like maybe I'll get a different job or a promotion or something out of this. And it will likely, especially if you happen to have damage yourself, it might take you a really long time to realize, oh, wait a minute, this is heading down a dark road.
To be clear, there's no evidence of any of that with the victim, but yeah. And to be clear, what he did was, at least the allegations, was criminal. And not every one would go down that road, given even the circumstances and the thoughts that we're laying out. So it's not to excuse it, and it's not to normalize what he did in terms of the allegations. But anyway, so that's the landscape. We have the Amber Heard situation in 2017. We have this sexual harassment case that was ongoing, settled in 2018. And by the way, as I'm going through all these different triggers, if you will, these are just the ones that we know about.
Sure.
God knows what's happening behind the scenes, right? So July 2018 was the Thailand kids incident, and we went into detail about that over the past 2 chapters, really. And I would speculate that he was massively triggered by this moment, particularly the kids being in danger and the Vernon Unsworth telling him to stick it where the sun don't shine, which might be related at the very least to his father's abuse of him, or sexual abuse of some kind. At the very least, we know that Elon Musk's body was traumatized, right?
Yeah.
When you put hands on physical and you're beating, it's one thing to be told you're an idiot. It's another thing to have your internal space, the physical space of your body, to have that violated. And especially if someone's like throwing you around for an extended period of time, you just feel like
you have no autonomy.
Yeah, there's no boundary, there's no safety.
And it's very telling, because imagine that he had said a different expression like, oh, he can go fuck himself, screw that guy, or whatever, right? But then to call it out like, this person indicated that I should have sex with myself, or that I should whatever, or in this case, he said that I should insert an object. Because when we watched it at first, that's the first thing I called out. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is.
Well, I had primed you because I had speculated.
But I had not heard the thing that he said about it, and it turns out he calls it out explicitly.
Yeah,
that's very telling in my mind.
Right, and then he calls Vernon. We're pointing because we're on our screen. We can see it. Well, I'll just that Elon Musk. His follow up is call him a pedo.
Yeah.
Like I don't. Who knows if it's related, but could be related. So then in August of 2018, he has another interview, New York Times, and he says that the past year has been one of the most difficult years of his life. And he says that it's due to people attacking him online. He worded it differently, but also work stress and extreme loneliness.
Oof.
He talks about how lonely he is. So remember the Amber Heard breakup was significant. And by, maybe a year later, maybe even longer, August, he's talking about the stress and the loneliness and people attacking him online. It's building up.
Question?
Yeah.
How many kids does he have at this point?
Good question. I think he might...
it's a rhetorical question. The reason I'm asking is because I have 2 kids. The one I feel a lot of things, man. So one thing is hard to feel is lonely when you're raising kids. Maybe this is not everyone's experience, but it is telling that for someone that's so many kids, he feels so lonely.
Yeah, because I think his relationships with his family, his kids, is very, very distant.
Right.
It's as close as I think he can tolerate given his traumas. His defenses regarding work and Twitter obviously pull him away from that. But anyway, so again, think about all the events that are heading up to this point and just the amount of turmoil that he's going through and the complete unresolvedness of all of his traumas. He says, quote, "There were times when I didn't leave the factory for 3 or 4 days when I didn't even go outside. This has really come at the expense of seeing my kids and seeing friends." And then later in the interview, he says, "It is often a choice of no sleep or Ambien." He was talking about how he had insomnia during this time. And to my knowledge, I think he continues to take Ambien.
What, Ambien is to help you sleep?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Ambien has a lot of side effects, which we'll get into later. But this just points at how much stress he's going through. Remember, he also gave that interview about Amber Heard, about how it was severe emotional pain. And then later he's being interviewed, loneliness. He says that this is one of the worst years of his entire life because, according to my take on the situation, this is when at least half of the internet turned on him. And it was very, very hard for him. And it's not just like, oh, bummer. I think he was in a constant state of distress. And it's one thing to get disapproval, but think about where he comes from, where approval and acceptance is not just like this nice little thing. It's the opposite of what he went through, which is to be beaten on a regular basis by his father and all the bullies at school.
Right.
It's a matter of life and death to get acceptance. So the stress is obviously heightened around that, fight or flight. So I want to pause there, and after the break, we'll go into COVID-19, Cybertruck, and the drugs that might be involved in this and beyond. But the rest of this episode will just be for patrons of the podcast. So if you want to hear this episode, become a patron. Otherwise, please take care of yourself because
you deserve it.